Coming up in this week's Elder Scrolls Weekly, we answer all your questions talking about payment models, mounts, crafting and much, much more. It's all in this week's Elder Scrolls Weekly. Hello everyone and a very warm welcome to episode 2 of Elder Scrolls Weekly, which is our weekly show looking at everything Elder Scrolls, obviously. I'm joined again by the Lord Nerevar of video game journalism, Mr. Andy Kelly.
Hello.
You alright?
Good.
Good. We're not going to waste any time today because we're going to go straight into loads and loads of questions we had from last week's episode. And we're going to start off with Keegan Smith, who says, can you still use forges and make your own armour?
Yes.
Yes, I heard that, yes, yeah. And you're going to have a different sort of crafting place for each skill that you have. So
Yeah.
armour and weaponsmiths apparently need an anvil and a forge, much like in Skyrim.
Yeah, and it's the same as in Guild Wars and World of Warcraft. You need to go to a specific station to do your crafting. I don't know whether you'll be able to do anything on the move, because maybe like lesser crafting of smaller objects, whatever. I'm not sure, but we do know that to do the main bulk of your crafting, you have to be at a station, which is typical MMO, format. So nothing really surprising there.
No,
but armor smithing is one of the professions.
Yeah, and sort of levelling up will sort of allow you to invest points apparently, and you can sort of invest those points in active and passive skills, much like in what we saw. We touched on it briefly last week about skills in the game, and the sort of professions work in the same way, I believe, as the sort of the general levelling. One thing I thought was interesting is that one of the skills, the crafting professions, is a provisioner, which is basically a cook.
Yeah.
And you can have a campfire with that, so presumably that's one thing you might be able to do on the move. Or
Yeah. So that may work the same way as Guild Wars had a cookery crafting, which was actually quite deep and complex. I gave up on it and done the easier weapon one. But yeah, so they said, someone asked them on their website if the properties of ingredients would be the same as they are in Elder Scrolls. So if you've done any of the cooking stuff in Skyrim, you know that certain foodstuffs and certain herbs and stuff have certain properties, and they said that most of that will carry over. So if you've done an absolute shitload of non-related cookery or whatever, and like alchemy and crafting and stuff, then a lot of the properties will be the same, but some will be different. So there'll be new stuff to learn. But it's kind of cool that they're keeping some of that intact, so that it's not completely detached from what we've seen previously.
I read exactly the same. So if you're used to making like potions out of blue mountain flowers and things like that, and you are kind of sort of familiar with the kind of the fauna of each of the worlds, you will be you'll have a good grounding in that kind of stuff. Apparently you can only learn 2 skills at once, which is sort of, again, is pretty much the norm.
Yeah.
And
professions. Yeah. So you presumably be able to drop one. I mean, I've yet to encounter an MMO where you can't just drop a profession and replace it with another one.
Have you?
So yeah, I'd expect the same from this, but obviously that's not confirmed.
Have you read anything at all about recipes or sort of schematics? Because I've actually found some conflicting stuff about it. I initially thought there were going to be no recipes, but there is one question about something else answered on the Elder Scrolls Online website, which suggests that you are able to sort of deconstruct stuff and then get schematics from doing that.
Yeah, I've read the same thing where they said that you don't need blueprints, so to speak, or whatever the Elder Scrolls equivalent would be. But then, yeah, I mean, like again, that is another. The crafting system sounds like really in line with previous MMOs. The way that you can take junk objects, instead of selling them, you can break them down into component parts. But yeah, it's a bit unclear about how intrinsic like blueprints are and recipes are to making stuff, or whether you can just throw 2 things together and see what happens. So
I think it's something that's definitely going to be a lot more advanced than it was in Skyrim, and sort of as the series has progressed over recent years, it's something that's come to the fore in a way that perhaps it didn't before. I think previously in Morrowind, with your armory skill, it was just repairing stuff rather than making stuff.
It needs to be designed to be played over 400 hours. There needs to be, like, if you could, so you if you could just go in and in Skyrim before the patch, admittedly, you could craft like thousands of iron daggers and like max out your armor smithing within like an hour. In an MMO, it has to be designed with the long game in mind, so you're gonna have to be still crafting high tier stuff when you hit level, when you hit the level cap. So it's going to be different from Elder Scrolls, but it's also in that the materials have similar properties and stuff like that. Will be similar, but it does sound like a pretty standard MMO crafting system because they work well enough. So I wouldn't see them wanting to mess around with that too much.
No, I mean that sense of progression over a long period of time definitely sort of has to be geared towards that kind of MMO crowd. One thing that really did interest me that I saw, which is sort of digressing from the initial question even more than we have already, is that crafters will be able to upgrade fortresses in Cyrodiil at the end game and possibly also help to build things like trebuchets and sort of siege weapons, rams, stuff like that. Which is
end-game PvP stuff.
Yeah. I mean that could be amazing, and that's sort of something that's like that kind of high-end crafting when it's not necessarily just about weapons, being good enough to build like a ram or something which could sort of turn the tide of an entire battle would be amazing. I think it'd be really, really exciting, but we'll see. One actually unrelated question that was also from Keegan was about pickpocketing other players, and I think we can say unequivocally there's no pickpocketing in the game.
No. I can understand why. I mean, it's a bit of a shame because
chaos.
Thief type characters will miss that, like rogue types. But yeah, I mean, it would be mental if you had no way of stopping. If you were just wandering around a town and you got pickpocketed and there's no way of stopping it or noticing it.
Someone just lifts your Daedric battle axe out of your backpack while you're not even looking.
That's the sad thing about MMOs is because human beings have a tendency towards shitty behaviour, and so they have to put some limits in place. Because if you look at like something like Second Life, where there are no limits, that place is like it's like a dimension. It's like a hell dimension.
It's awful. It's like the absolute bilge war of humanity.
You see things in there that even my mind, numbed by years of playing violent video games, I see stuff in there. I'm like, nope, log off. No. So Elder Scrolls Online is no different. It has to put some limits in place. It's the same reason why, and also probably a technical reason, there's no dynamic physics, so you can't go around knocking stuff over because it would just make the server explode. So yeah, no pickpocketing.
There is lockpicking. And actually, one of the, speaking of crime, there's a really cool suggestion on Tamriel Foundry all about like sort of bad choices that you're caught doing add to your bounty, and then they suggested that other players should be able to come and collect the bounty if it's particularly bad, which would be incredible. I don't think they'll do it, but it's a great idea.
See, that would be brilliant, and it would sort of fit in with the Elder Scrolls lore, because EVE Online has bounties, which is the system's abused because you can put a bounty on any player. But what's brilliant is that when you can look at the universe's most wanted list, and you'll see like a list of people with massive bounties on their heads, and there's also a separate menu for the players that have collected the most bounties. So there's one guy at the top who's like literally Boba Fett in EVE, and people can message him, and in his bio it says, if you want me to hunt someone down, just message me. And he's like
the A-team.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So like the bounty system in EVE is really, I mean, that game is more everything that happens in that game is player driven, and so it's a different type of structure. But I would like to see most wanted players in Elder Scrolls Online.
It's not unfeasible, is it? I mean, again, it's the thing they had in Dark Souls. You had, like, as you split off into different sort of guilds, if you will, like there was one that was just concerned with, like, they had a big book of bad people that invaded other worlds, and you could just go in and sort them out,
smiting the sinners. Well, it'd be good if they implemented something like that. I don't know how it would work on a, because I don't know how it'd work from a PvP perspective. You couldn't just have people fighting in the open in the street, and of course there's no there is only one server in Elder Scrolls Online. You don't have PvP server, roleplay servers, etc. It's one server, so they can't have it like they can't have players just killing each other, because people will abuse that as well. They'll go, "Oh, you had a bounty on him."
Of 10 gold. So I
people will do that
for hours and hours.
But if they just want to harass someone, they'll put a bounty of 1 gold on them and kill them and go, well, I was allowed.
Excuse,
So that again goes back to this thing about having to keep some law and order without making it feel restricted.
I think we'll come back to that actually later with when we start talking about the payment models, because I think that's quite a key thing in terms of controlling people.
Yeah.
They've got a lot more to lose if they're actually paying for it. But I think we've pretty much covered everything in that. Thanks very much for that, Keegan. Okay, next question is from Ali Gill. Brilliantly phrased. Will it have in-game purchases like coins, diamonds, and all that sort of bullshit? If yes, this game is a lemon.
I think you mean like you can buy a separate currency for real-world money to spend on cosmetic items and stuff. Guild Wars has it. EVE Online has it even. And yeah, I don't know. I think if it did have that, I don't think it would automatically make the whole game a lemon, because it would be optional. I would never spend real world money on one of those weird currencies to buy like a golden wizard's hat, but I don't mind it being there because people do, and it helps developers by giving them some extra money. And if you're not using it to spend it on weapons or anything that changes the course of the PvP, if it's just for cosmetic stuff like magic hats and fancy pantaloons, then whatever, they might as well stick it in because it'll make them an extra bit of money. But yeah, we don't know if it will have it, but I would say almost certainly it will have it.
It seems like the way things are going, and definitely it depends on the business model as well. If it's buy to play, I think you're definitely going to see sort of cosmetic items in there, and I'm sort of fine with that as long as it isn't pay to win. Yeah,
they would be mad to put in a system where you can pay real world money to buy game sort of stat boosting objects. And the people making Elder Scrolls Online are MMO veterans, and they've made these games before, so I'd be surprised if they did that. But who knows?
Yeah,
that could, they might do something ridiculous and the whole game will be a disaster because of it.
But it will be a lemon.
Yeah, I severely doubt it.
Right, that's cool. Thank you for that. Go straight into the next one. When do you think they will make another single player Elder Scrolls game, which is something we sort of touched upon last week, because as we keep reiterating, this is to deal with all the Elder Scrolls games, but I think we're in for a bit of a wait from what I can see.
Well, my theory is that having made Skyrim, Bethesda are now working on a new Fallout game.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I also think they're working on new tech, because they said that the Skyrim engine was new tech, but we quickly realised that it was a souped-up version of the Oblivion engine.
A bit of a lie, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a lie. They were like, oh, we've completely remade the engine, but it still had a lot of the same problems, the sort of slightly stiff character animation, and it wasn't massively improved in a lot of ways. But I think that Bethesda now they'll be working on a new engine, because they can't use that one again.
Surely not, no.
Or a version of it. They've got to sort out the mad robotic character animation. So that I think they'll be working on a new engine, and then they'll be working on a new Fallout. That's what I think. Yeah. Just and that's only because of the pattern forming. Mm-hmm. What they've done. I did Oblivion, I did Fallout 3, I did Skyrim, Fallout 4 maybe, and then Elder Scrolls. But who knows? Maybe the studio will expand and there'll be 2 teams working on it.
It's entirely possible. I mean,
ZeniMax are a wealthy old company.
It's humongous, aren't they? One of the biggest. We know pretty much that Fallout 4 is on the way. We did a rumour mill video of it, which the annotation should be on screen now. And Eric Dellums, who's the voice of Three Dog, pretty much was authorised to sort of put out like a cryptic tweet saying that it was on the way. We don't know. I assume it's Bethesda making it, and some people on the video comment, they would like to see Obsidian return, which seems highly unlikely.
They're busy at the moment with Project Eternity, their Kickstarter sort of homage to Baldur's Gate style RPGs, which is going to be really good, and they're doing the South Park game as well for Ubisoft. So I'd be surprised if they were doing. Maybe they'll be brought on to do a Fallout 4 : whatever, like a sub
New Boston.
Yeah, something like that. So, but yeah, I think there'll be new Fallout news before there'll be new Elder Scrolls news. But who knows? And the Three Dog thing. My worry now is, there's this new thing happening where you go, new game announced from series you love. You scroll down the story, released for iOS and Android.
Oh god, yeah.
And you're like, oh, so it might be like Three Dog Origins.
Yeah, or like a Three Dog radio show.
Yeah, not to, because that's me writing off all mobile gaming. But I mean, come on, like, if they announced a new Fallout for iOS, you would be going,
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited, maybe not. I don't know. So who knows?
What we do know is that they will probably be working on it right now, because they started on Oblivion immediately after finishing Morrowind, and the same with Skyrim as well. So the moment we get like a glimpse of like the hilt of a sword, or a wisp of beard hair from a Nord, then we're going to be covering it in full and ridiculous detail. So stay tuned, and thank you for the question.
That was from Frosty Matt 85, by the way.
Yeah, thank you, Frosty Matt. Next one is from Yellow Safety. Does this mean you'll be able to play as a werewolf?
They haven't confirmed that yet, but
my impression is, from reading various previews, is that yes, you will, to a point, and it's likely to form its sort of own skill tree in the same way that vampirism will.
Yeah. And it would be easy to do.
Yeah,
it'd just be a new skill set, wouldn't it? But then, isn't there the issue of only being able to go out? Well, how do werewolves work?
Well, it sort of changed over time. Back in Blood Moon, like, you would only become a werewolf at night, and it's kind of like, my view of it is that through the history of the series, it should be like both a blessing and a curse. So when you're a werewolf at night, it's amazing. You can run around, you can jump all over the place. Yeah. I don't think you could sleep or something like that. So like healing and things like that were more difficult. And obviously with vampires in Morrowind, like going out in sunlight was almost instant death.
So in Skyrim, I've played Skyrim for probably 1,000 hours or something, and I haven't done the companions.
Nor I actually, no.
And you do turn into a werewolf in that, don't you?
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
I'm not sure how it works, but I mean, if Elder Scrolls has its own rules for werewolfism, what's the word?
Lycanthropy.
Lycanthropy. Yeah. Yes, werewolfism is not a word.
We've made it a word.
But yeah, if they've set rules out for it, then I imagine it'll be the same. But again, they have to jam it into MMO class system.
And day-night cycles as well. If you
yeah.
Because if it is real time, like WoW, then you're in trouble. Like, if you can only, because I only ever played WoW sort of from 11 o'clock at night onwards.
Yeah, so you'd constantly be in a werewolf form, and you'd need some sort of. There needs to be a negative to it, negative side to it, because if you go a vampire in Elder Scrolls, then there's lots of negatives to make up for the fact that you're immune to disease and whatever. Like guards attack you, and your face goes all gaunt and drained of life. But yeah, if they did do it, I think it would just work as a separate sort of, like you said, a skill tree with werewolfy slashes and biting and that sort of thing. One
thing I would like to see is, this is sort of off the wish list of things we want in Elder Scrolls Online, is different types of lycanthropy for different races. So like in the history of Elder Scrolls, there is mention of like were-crocodiles, which sounds shit, but like for Argonians that makes much more sense than them turning into a wolf. Yeah. And I think like were-boars as well were in Daggerfall. So
imagine a big werewolf Khajiit, like a big sort of scary cat.
Yeah, like it could turn into like a were-lion. That's the scariest of all the cats.
That'd be cool. Yeah. I'd be surprised if they went to that much detail.
I would be very surprised as well.
It's in the lore though.
Yeah, it is.
And they're very dedicated to the lore, so much so that they have a guy whose job is the lore master.
I would love that job.
And he looks like a wizard. He's got like he's like a George R.R. Martin type. He's got like a big white beard and stuff, and he's literally the lore master. I like to imagine that he lives at the top of a mountain and
just shouts things down.
Yeah, with a cane in his hand, and the developers have to like go up and pay tribute to him and ask him questions about.
Bring him sacrifices. We brought you the work experience, boy lore master.
Or he's probably just the guy that sits in an office with a pile of Elder Scrolls books, going slowly mad as he gets reality and the Elder Scrolls mixed up.
Well, the thing is, it's so deep, isn't it? Like, you can make the slightest mistake. They last week before last, I think they brought out a new sort of set of concept art for the Quama. I don't know if you ever played Morrowind, but like Quama and Quama eggs were like kind of an industry in Morrowind. They would have mines dedicated to them. And I went on a forum, and there was quite a sort of a relatively heated argument about the way they changed the sort of physiology of these things, because they used to have this really cool mechanic where you have like a worker, and there was like a little sort of like worm thing, like a sort of a maggot essentially, and then when that climbed inside the worker, it would become a warrior. And it was quite a nice little sort of weird sort of alien style kind of combination of creatures that made them into something else, and they seem to have dropped that entirely. But sort of is that a problem that the lore masters missed there? Do you think, or should we care?
The series has contradicted itself, but I'm sure even George R.R. Martin has contradicted stuff in his books. I was going to say Tolkien probably has, but I wonder, has Tolkien ever contradicted himself, because he's such a genius, but who knows. But it's not surprising that with so much history and so much lore to keep track of, that a few things will be different. Because if you look at like the layout of Skyrim in the old Elder Scrolls games, it's slightly different. Cities are in different places. You just got to, because it is a game, and you've got to change things to suit the gameplay. Sometimes, if that means sacrificing the lore, then if the lore master allows it, then,
so be it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Kieran has asked about the armour types. I've just said Kieran there because I can't quite pronounce his surname.
Yeah, it's best not to attempt it because we might embarrass ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's just go straight on to armour types. So, yeah, they're talking about the armour types because there must be a lot more for an MMO. I'm not entirely sure if there are or not, actually.
Well, I don't know whether he means types, as in light, heavy, etc., or he means design.
I think it's probably design.
Because I think in Skyrim we saw a good range of, we saw Nordic armor, we saw dwarven armor. So maybe we'll get to see like Argonian armor, because no one really knows what their armor looks like.
Well, that is the thing. I think
Khajiit armor and so on.
Yeah, I think the sort of like each race will have like a heavy armor dedicated to it, and I think you'll still see that you'll still see ebony, daedric, glass, things like that. But the sort of the specific armor sets, I think we may be able to show you some concept art, are all kind of geared towards specific races. So there is going to be some sort of difference between them. But
because the red guards, you see a couple of red guards in Skyrim, and they wear like Middle Eastern, like Persian style, to suit the fact that they're from a desert. So I think we'll see more of that. But I think there's a few races we haven't ever seen their native armor.
No, I can't ever remember seeing sort of specific Argonian or armor or anything like that. So potentially there's probably going to be lots of different types, but they're all going to fall into the three categories of light, medium and heavy, which relate very much to sort of light for casters. So previously light armour was leather, things like that, glass. Now it's cloth. It's what previously we would be calling unarmoured. So casters will be wearing cloth. Medium is now leather rather than sort of, well, medium disappeared with Oblivion. So that's going to be like your stealth, stamina based armour, and then heavy encompasses probably every other sort of named type of armour that you can think of. So it's all going to fall into those three categories, but I reckon there'll be loads and loads of different sets, much like in every other MMO, but they'll be sort of rigidly compartmentalised.
With so many different regions, there's going to be a lot of different styles. Like Guild Wars and had different sort of styles of armour depending on region, mostly on NPCs, but I think that with Tamriel being what it is, and so big and so rich with history, we're going to see a lot of really cool looking armour. And it'll be the same hierarchy as in MMOs, where you'll be able to tell a player's level by how ornate their armour is. Like, once you hit level 30, you get your shoulder pads, then you get your helm, and
Yeah, so you'll look rubbish up until you put like 50
and
hours
then
in.
You'll see, like, you'll be running around in the starting area and you'll see a guy in full Daedric plate armour riding past on a dragon or something. You'll be like, yeah, that's what I aspire to.
I think they must sort of pay people to do that, because I vividly remember seeing like my first sort of guy on a Kodo and WoW, thinking that I have to happen. Like, my life will not be complete until
I had that with World of Warcraft, and then when I got my mounts and everything, I felt a bit empty. I was like, I have nothing to aspire to now, because I've got I've got the good armour, I've got a nice mount. Now what? So yeah, expect there to be lots of really awesome looking armour, and we've seen little glimpses of dwarven armour, and dwarven armour looks awesome. That's the kind of sort of like, they look like robots, brass robots with Roman centurion helms and stuff.
It's a very cool look. I think that's an armour type that's progressed really well over the series.
Yeah,
and I'm sure like the iterations of them here will probably look amazing as well. So as and when we see any more, we'll obviously include it in episodes, but thank you very much for the question. Untouchable has asked when it'll be out, which is really easy. Spring 2014 apparently. Have you heard the same?
Yeah.
I'm assuming because it's been delayed because of being developed for consoles, I'm assuming it'll be out on all formats.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be out for when PS4 and Xbox launch, but yeah, next year, next spring. Spring is obviously fake, but yeah.
There you go. Next one we've got is from Grim Reaper 6000, who asks about the Temple of Amina in Skyrim being fully functional now, and are guilds functioning, like the Mythic Dawn, things like that. Temple of Amina, I think, from what I've seen, like, was originally a military fort, and because this is set so far before, the likelihood is if it's in at all, it won't be a temple, even if it's in there in any capacity whatsoever. Guilds, though, we do know are in, and like everything else in the game, seem to add additional skill lines and abilities, things like that.
And they're all the guilds announced so far are the standard guilds from Elder Scrolls. So this, like you mentioned, the Sigic Order and the Mythic Dawn, they aren't confirmed yet. So it's the standard fighters, mages guild. But I would love to have like a Mythic Dawn quest line, because the one in Skyrim was great. And obviously they formed the backbone of the story in Oblivion. I always thought it was an interesting group. So maybe it'd be nice to join some less expected guilds. I mean, as fun as the Fighters Guild and the Mages Guild and stuff are, it'd be good to join some other more stranger factions, because there's a lot of them out there. I
think they've said that Thieves Guild and Dark Brotherhood will probably be implemented post-release, but the one, speaking of sort of the stranger ones, the one I'd love to see, and it makes perfect sense, is the Morag Tong from Morrowind, and they're kind of, according to the history, they're like pretty prevalent around this time. So I mean, again, that's entirely feasible, and as long as you're not sort of tied to them in a way that you were in previous games, which is entirely likely, then there's no reason why they couldn't sort of just go completely mad and have them all in there. And there's so many factions and things, aren't there?
Yeah, and obviously you in the grand scheme of things, you are with a faction fighting the war in Tamriel, so it'd be a bit weird having a secondary faction. I don't know how they'll work that out in the story-wise, but it's a bit of a shame they're adding the Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood later, because those are the guilds that I always head to first, because they're always brilliant. At least the Thieves Guild in Skyrim I thought was a bit disappointing, but in Oblivion it was just brilliant. Like when you were invading the White Gold Tower and stealing the Elder Scroll and stuff like that was brilliant. The heist.
See, I'm incredibly boring with RPGs. I'm like a sort of heavy armour wearing, sword and shield kind of lump. But I guess that's why this could potentially work, because you're going to have groups of people that all kind of lean towards different areas, and I think it'd be really interesting to see how something like the Thieves Guild will work in a persistent world.
Yeah,
because like you say, it's all about sort of heists and doing things in your own way, so potentially really interesting. But we'll bring you more information on that as and when we get it. So basically, yes, guilds are in. Exactly what sort of form they'll take, we don't know yet, but stay tuned. Next question we've got from Malastern is about the Imperial race. Will they be playable, and who they are allied with? No, basically.
No, this is before the Imperials had their foothold in
I think
Tamriel.
it's before and after, isn't it? It's around the sort of period of, they call it interregnum, I think, which is sort of the period after, like, second era. So like the original emperors are all dead, the kind of Akvari potentates have taken over for a while.
Dragonfires have gone out in the White Gold Tower.
So it's a pretty bad time. And I think as well, according to the story, like the Imperial army's kind of been bolstered by Manamako by sort of raising the dead to help them with their numbers, and then this is kind of like spiraled into the whole kind of the problem and the reason why Molotov sort of got a foothold, because there's this giant conspiracy going on. So I think if they are in, they're probably going to be antagonists in some way.
Yeah, and I think it's good to not have them in there, because they've always been such a major presence in Elder Scrolls, not in Morrowind so much, but in Oblivion, you're in the capital. Even in Skyrim, the idea is that Skyrim is being occupied, or they're attempting to occupy Skyrim. I think it'd be good to put them out of the picture, because they are like, I don't want to say the most boring race, because they've got some really good history and some good characters.
The default choice.
But they're just like humans, There's no. I just think of them as humans, as men.
Yeah, human men.
Yeah. Whereas I want to see more of the crazy races, the Argonians and all that. So
I think that's probably something that we haven't really talked about, and it is quite exciting about the way that they've done this, and brave to cut the Imperials completely. Like the people that for the last 3 games have been kind of the driving force behind the story. And now that you can't even play them. And I think, you know, the idea for me of, you know, the lesser races, for want of a better word, like the ones that people tend to play less, coming to the fore is quite exciting.
No one ever plays as an Argonian in Elder Scrolls.
Well, in Morrowind, I think you couldn't have shoes, so your armor rating was always going to be lower because they could, you know, there were no boots.
Because they've got, well, that makes sense because they've got like big, like Velociraptor style claws.
Yeah,
how can they wear boots in Skyrim? But yeah, that's just what video game logic.
Yeah, again, the lore master has failed us in developing feet for our games.
We'll press Bethesda on this. We'll ask them, can Argonians wear shoes, and if so, how?
Yeah, like really how? We're not going to leave until we get an answer. Okay, so we managed to go from the Imperial race to Argonian shoes in one question now, which is good. Mason the Muffin Man would like to hear about how stealth works in the game. Do you have any personal experience of it when you played it?
No, actually I didn't do any stealth, but I do know that it is in there. Do you know more about it?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, from what I've heard, little snippets here and there, that while Bethesda haven't really come out and told us exactly what's happening, it sounds a lot like invisibility in World of Warcraft if you ever played as a rogue. So basically you'll be out of sight until you're kind of revealed by something, so like an area of effect spell, taking damage, something like that. There are some spells as well which will reveal you. There's one called Mage Light, I think, which will act a little bit like if you ever played a hunter in WoW, you can use a flare to kind of reveal anyone that's stealthed in your area, so that'll work a little bit like that. But the key difference, I think, is that stealth is a stamina based skill, so as you stealth into an area, your stamina is going to be going down all the time, and obviously that's kind of reliant on what armour and things you're wearing. The
normal stealth wouldn't work because it's normal stealth's line of sight, and if you've got if you're trying to sneak up on a real player with a third person camera, they're just going to see you and turn
it's just
around.
Impossible. Yeah. And like as we all know, stealth in games is just absolute nonsense at the best of times.
Yeah.
So like actual invisibility is the only way it's going to work. We know that Nightblades have an ability called Shadow Cloak, which is their kind of invisibility skill. So where previously like invisibility was an illusion skill, like things like Chameleon would sort of blend you into the surroundings. I think that's going to substantially change. So you're going to have stealth classes that aren't necessarily magic users that can become invisible.
Just like, just the generic MMO rogue class, really, with some Elder Scrollsy twists on it.
Are you disappointed by that, or to be honest, I can't see another way for it to have worked?
Nah, there's no way they could have done line of sight. I mean, they could have maybe done, like in Thief, the Thief series, you've got the little gem with the light on it, and when you're in the shadows, the light disappears. They could have made it so that when you go in the shadows, you appear invisible to players, or something like that. But then they would have had to, like, when they were designing every inch of the map, they would have had to take into mind shadows and stealth players. It's just, I think having anything other than a MMO style rogue invisibility cloak just wouldn't work in an MMO. So I never plays that class, so I'm not massively disappointed. But anyone who does plays that class, I'm sure they, having played a lot of MMOs in their day, will know that there's only a few ways you can do stealth in that type of game. So
it still sounds like it'll be an important part of any kind of group dynamic. They mentioned in the Dungeons article they put out recently that, you know, you're still going to have the guy stealthing in and taking out specific characters in like a pack and things like that. So again, if you are familiar with MMO mechanics, that's what to expect. Next question from the Kurt, talking about the 3-faction split restricting PvP. Can you do quest dungeons with a friend if they were one of the other 2 factions?
That's a very good question, and one that Bethesda haven't addressed. We will ask Bethesda about this, and we'll find out if they're willing to tell us. But that is a great question. I was actually wondering the same, because obviously in WoW, if you want to play with friends, you have to, and they're a horde and they're your alliance, you can't play with them. Guild Wars got around this problem because you can just go meet up with anyone using portals and Lion's Arch, and I think Guild Wars is it's one of my favourite games, and it really got rid of a lot of those restrictions in MMOs. So you could just, if your friend just started playing as a Norn, who are very similar to the Nords in Guild Wars, and you were playing as, you know, a human, you could join them in the starting area, and even if you were 20 levels higher, you would still get balanced XP. So they really took that barrier out, and I would like to see Elder Scrolls Online get rid of that as well, because it's a social experience, and not being able to team up with a friend because they're in a different faction, whilst it makes sense in the lore, I think sometimes gameplay has to take precedence over that. So hopefully there's no restrictions. I will ask Bethesda directly about this, and we'll come back next episode with an answer, hopefully.
Great stuff. Next question from B52 Cats. Can you play with a controller? Undoubtedly, I'd say.
Yeah, if they're making a console version, there's going to be controller mapping now, and anyone who plays PC games will know that these days you plug in a controller and the Xbox buttons are magically mapped already. Even like Arma 3, which isn't coming out on consoles, has actually no, Arma 3 is coming out on consoles, so that explains it. Well, you know that when you plug in an Xbox controller now, a lot of modern PC games will map the controls like that. So
yeah, I mean, Skyrim felt very much like a game that was geared towards controllers, and it didn't feel like some of like Morrowind, where it's trying to force a sort of PC architecture onto a controller. So yeah, without question. Last question for this section, I think this is the biggest one we'll deal with as well, is have we heard anything about the payment model?
Important issue for any MMO.
It's a huge one, really, and there's been no official line from Bethesda yet.
Well, let's look at the other big MMOs. So you got World of Warcraft, you have to buy the game and the appropriate expansion packs, but Blizzard are always putting ridiculous deals on them, so it's not so much of a big problem. Then you have to pay a monthly subscription, which is roughly about £9, £8 to £9 roughly a month. Then you got Guild Wars 2, which again I don't want to sound like a Guild Wars fanboy, but they got it right, where you buy the game outright, and then you are free. You can create a handful of characters, and you don't have to pay a subscription, which was brilliant. I don't know how that worked out economically for them, but the game hasn't died yet, so it's still fairly busy. So,
is there anything in game on top of that, like cosmetic microtransactions?
Well, they have, as we talked about earlier, they have the optional real-world currency spend on, but it's only for cosmetic stuff. And actually, you know what? You can buy limited time XP boosters, that give you, for an hour you'll get 10% more XP from killing monsters. There's nothing too crazily game breaking. And EVE Online, you don't have to buy the game, as far as I'm aware. You can just download the client and you buy game time, which is quite expensive. I think it's about 15 quid a month to play EVE. And the Old Republic as well. I can't remember how much it was, but it had a subscription base.
It's an interesting one, that one.
But then they realised that it was losing, they spent so much money on it, and it was losing so many subscribers, including me and all my friends who were playing it religiously for 100 hours, just gave up on it. We all, not like we didn't agree to stop playing it, we all just fell out of it around about the time they went, Old Republic's struggling, now it's free to play up until a certain level.
It's a worrying development, isn't it, when that happens?
Yeah, well, that's the sign at an MMO's on hard times, is when it goes free to play. And Old Republic went free to play pretty quickly after it came out, at least in MMO terms. So the standard is you're looking at, let's say, an average of £10 a month to play an MMO. I think they're not going to do a Guild Wars. There's going to be a monthly sub. I think
so. I mean,
I'm convinced there will be, on top of buying the game.
Sort of the overwhelming body of opinion that I've seen was suggesting buy to play, but I mean, realistically, I think it sort of feels like it has to be a subscription model with the amount of money that they've spent on it and the things that they're promising. And I don't know what everyone thinks about that, but certainly from my point of view, I wouldn't particularly want it to be completely free to play. I don't, the quality of the game is sort of detrimentally affected, I think, usually by that, and it sort of smacks of those banner adverts you get on websites where you've got like a female elf in a bikini that's tempting you to come and play.
Some weird like Chinese MMO that they're trying to get subscribers to or whatever.
Yeah, so I mean, there's basically three places it can fall in. It can either be buy to play with the microtransactions, pay to play like WoW, or free to play, and I think we can probably rule out free to play. I mean, the interesting question for me is whether or not, if it is pay to play, how that links into sort of premium subscriptions that are now part of both PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, because the Shuya Yoshida from Sony has basically said, with Final Fantasy: A Realm Reborn, which is going to be subscription based, you're not going to be able to play it online unless you have PS Plus. Whereas the sort of the PC games that are currently free to play, you're not going to have PS Plus
like
to play.
PlanetSide 2, stuff like that.
And in talking about Final Fantasy, he did sort of lump in Elder Scrolls Online as well. So I think, as an indicator of what they're possibly going to do, it would be worth looking at what happens with The Realm Reborn and seeing if that does end up subscription and PS Plus, because I actually don't know if it will or not at the moment.
But on PC, obviously, that's not a concern, and it'll just be buy the game, and what I think is just pay for a subscription. And they might, after a few months after launch, or maybe just touching a year or something, or maybe a year, they'll do free to play up to level 10. WoW has done that, Old Republic's done that. So, but I don't think they'll ever make the whole game free to play.
No,
because it's like a big budget, polished, Bethesda production, or ZeniMax Online Studios production. So it's not they're going to expect people to pay for it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge deal. Do you think it would be a complete disaster if they ended up going free to play, if it all sort of they got to the point where they had to? Because it does alter people's perception of an MMO. I think it happened with Lord of the Rings Online, and as you said, the Old Republic.
Yeah, well, I don't think they will, and I don't think it would be a big problem if it happened after the fact, because all the foundations would be there. But if it was designed as a free to play game, free to play has a certain stigma around it, and for good reason, because you can sort of there's a difference between a free to play game and a sub game in the quality of world events and additional content and stuff. So I think for it to survive, they're going to need to, and to keep the quality up, they're going to have to charge people. And I don't mind paying a reasonable amount for an MMO. Like EVE Online's a little bit too expensive in my head for that type of game, but if they came up with a reasonable, like £6 to £8 monthly sub, then I'd be down with that.
Yeah,
if it means better content. And
also better behaviour as well, which we've touched on before. I think is such a key element in MMOs. If people are investing their money into a game that they're playing, they're less likely to just completely try and ruin everyone else's experience. And you certainly get an element of that with free-to-play stuff. People are just there because they've got nothing better to do. Whereas if you are paying for it, you're invested in that world and those characters.
And anyone who plays free-to-play games will know that you always get Russians coming in causing trouble. So that's not a slight on the great nation of Russia.
Absolutely,
I just mean you do get a lot of griefers seem to be from Russia, and they're always in there causing bother. So yeah.
So I mean, like we can't honestly answer that without any kind of official statement from Bethesda, but I think the feeling is that it won't be free to play. You're probably going to have to buy the game, and then the likelihood is that it's going to be subscription as well, I think. And I as well don't feel particularly badly about that. As long as it's worthwhile, I'm happy to pay a fee for it. I think that's in many ways better than just being sort of attacked with microtransactions and play to win stuff and things like that. So, but as ever, like if we get any more information on it, we'll maybe dedicate an episode to it, or get you some information as soon as we have anything else to go on. But yeah, stay tuned. Okay, so we're going to finish up with a final list of questions that we've got. That some really good questions from Fledril1337, who very kindly DM'd us, and we're going to go through most of these as quick as we can because we've been talking for ages. So it's going to be rapid fire. First of all, will there be any sort of player housing? No, apparently not. Everything that I've read says no. Have you read anything different?
No, and you know why? Because if every player had a house, then you'd have to build a whole new map.
I know we've got an entire continent, but that's a lot of people. Likewise, any sort of auction house, also apparently not. You are able to trade between players, but Bethesda have said, as far as I'm aware, that there is no auction house.
Which is mad, because an MMO economy needs an auction house. So I think they will add that, because people will go, no, we need that.
I think that's one of the things about the auction house and player housing is that they're a pretty good gold sink to get the economy going, get people saving money and things like that. So if not now, maybe in the future. Likewise, player-run shops are also highly unlikely, but there has been some speculation that they'll be added after launch. I mean, that's a sort of with the crafting, things like that. I think. Have you ever really felt the need for a shop?
It would be good to have somewhere to display the stuff you've made, but again, it's just a space thing. Like if you could, like in Elder Scrolls, you've got like market squares. Like if you could rent a display in it or something like that. I don't know how it would work. It's too big to make that work. But
does it, like for me, it doesn't work in a world of shift click where you can see what an item is just by clicking on the name and look at it and sort of see what it looks like on you. Like, I don't want to see it on a shop. I want to see what those polders look like on my shoulders.
Yeah, think of the gameplay as well. Just sitting at a shop, just waiting on people to go by. I guess it could be automated in the background or something, but I don't think there's enough space to accommodate. You'd have to build like shopping malls in every main city.
That'd be bonkers. I mean, it's a cool idea from like an RP point of view, but realistically, it can't happen. Guild housing, I think, also again not at launch. Some speculation that it may come as a sort of an update in time. Any sort of player protected item storage. Now, I couldn't find anything about this. I'm not sure. So at the moment, I'm going to say I don't know, but we'll try and find out.
There'll probably be guild banks and stuff, but yeah.
Next one is interesting, fast travel. It's slightly different from Oblivion and Skyrim in that you're not going to be able to fast travel from anywhere. It's all done via way shrines, as far as I'm aware. Did you find anything else about that?
No, that's what I've heard as well.
So basically, if you've found a way shrine, you can travel for free between two way shrines that you've already discovered, but you will be able to pay money and travel to one that's sort of hitherto undiscovered.
Similar to Guild Wars.
Yeah.
Where you can travel around Guild Wars for a fee that's so small it doesn't even matter. So, yeah.
I think it'd be great if they kind of do throwbacks to previous episodes, as well as having way shrines. Like if you could have in Morrowind you had silt striders, which would take you from town to town, which was a cool kind of in-game way of travelling about. And in Skyrim, maybe you could go back to the more traditional cart to get around. So yeah, there will be fast travel to a point, but obviously people aren't going to be able to teleport around everywhere because that will be madness. Next question we've got is about gathering ingredients for spawns. Will stuff respawn in the same place? Will there be phased harvesting points for plants and ores? From what I read, there's two different types. So the sky shards, which you can kind of farm to increase your attributes, won't despawn. So like numerous players will be allowed to find the same one. But it looks like ore and plants will repopulate over time in different places. So from what I can tell, that's going to be exactly the same situation as gathering is in the likes of World of Warcraft.
Yeah, and like Eve as well, where you'll go to an asteroid belt and it'll be empty, and you have to wait for the ore to appear again. It's
perhaps not the best way, but I can't honestly think of a more intelligent way of doing it, really.
And it forces you to... what's good about it in Eve is that in the baby starting areas, all the asteroid belts are empty. So it forces you to get out of your comfort zone and travel a little bit and go somewhere a little bit more dangerous to, So I think if it promotes people venturing, being a bit more adventurous, because you are an adventurer.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
We do know that you can deconstruct items to get raw materials and recipes, so hopefully that's answered that as best we can. Will there be durability for gear as a gold sink? My impression is that yes, there will, but we don't know the exact details yet, because we know when you die, there's a chance that when you get respawned at a way shrine, your gear will have to be repaired. Have you seen anything about sort of gear degradation over time?
No, but there will be a repair system. So, yeah.
And that links.
Elder Scrolls hasn't had it before,
right?
So if they're sticking to Elder Scrolls gameplay, you've never had to repair stuff. Although the Fallout games did have repair. You had to repair stuff. So I don't know. It depends on what they want to go, what direction you want to take it in. But if they're sticking to previous Elder Scrolls games, you won't have to repair your sword every couple of hours.
I think there was an armor skill in Morrowind, so like the stuff would break eventually, so you could sort of knock it back together. But it sort of seems like a very MMO thing to do, and if there is a penalty for degradation on death, then you presume that will maybe be across the board.
They need to do that because then you can't die in MMO, so there needs to be some consequence to make you want to avoid it.
Yeah, I mean that's the next question is death penalties. Will it just be a debuff or something more?
Well, when you, I'm not sure about the penalties, but when you die, because I died when I played it, it's the same as WoW. You appear as a shimmering ghost and you return to where you died and you resurrect yourself. So.
Okay. Apparently you can resurrect on the spot using a soul gem if you've got one, which is interesting because that kind of changes the way that soul gems were previously used, which again links into a question coming up. So perhaps because of the sort of, the you've lost your soul to Molag Bal fluff, they then kind of can use soul gems as a means of saying, well, but you can resurrect where you are. But don't know if that's class specific, because sort of in a lot of other MMOs your ability to resurrect on the spot is often class specific, or like resurrection in general is only done by certain groups, so we'll see about that. What is the party size for dungeons? It's 4 people apparently. Did you do any dungeons when you played it?
Yeah, I did one, but I did it on my own.
Okay.
So it wasn't like the greatest test of how they'll work, but we in the next episode are going to go into depth about dungeons, because they've done some interesting stuff to separate it from the usual dungeon crawling that you may be used to in WoW.
We did intend to go into more detail in this episode, but we've been talking for ages.
Yeah,
so
a lot of questions, and we do appreciate all these questions.
Give
cool, us more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll do a regular thing where we answer the burning questions you have.
Throwing back to what we mentioned before about soul gems, will enchanted weapons require soul gems to recharge them, or will there be an alternative way NPC who can recharge them? Now, not honestly sure about this, because like soul gems have definitely appeared to have changed in their use. They're sort of acting a little bit more like soul shards that the warlocks used in WoW. And enchantment as a skill actually sort of relates to staffs, jewellery, and to creating glyphs. So I think that idea of just being able to enchant a weapon with whatever spell you want and then recharge it using soul gems, it seems very unlikely as far as I can see. Just the kind of freedom of it in that kind of typical Elder Scrolls way doesn't really fit in with an MMO background, and also the enchantment skill just feels like a little bit different to what it previously used to be. I know that enchanting tables are a thing in the game in much the same way the forge and the anvil are required for armour smithing, so I think we'll have to wait and see, but expect it to be slightly different. Do you know any more about that, Andy?
No, I'm with you. I think there may be some change there in how they work.
Yeah. Can you go to another faction's starting area? This is like a potentially really cool one, because once you hit the level cap, which is 50, I've read that you can travel to another faction zone and experience a more difficult and rewarding version of those areas. So, the scope is there, like New Game Plus, basically, to go to different areas.
And this, again, once you've done that, there's another New Game Plus. There's a third tier of even harder, and so you will get to experience all 3 factions areas with one character. So that's good.
That's a lot of game, because I'm right in thinking it takes about 120 hours to get to level 50.
Yeah.
Presumably they're going to be, like, if it's New Game Plus, it's going to be scaled so XP will be harder to come by. You're looking at lots of hours.
Well, I did in Guild Wars you can do that, and I, with one character, did all the starting areas for every race, and it took a good old chunk of time. So yeah, it is good that you can do that, but whereas in Guild Wars you can do it whenever you want, here you have to already leveled up to 50 once. Potentially really interesting from like an RP perspective as well, going to different areas, getting that kind of Jorah Mormont feeling of being a man out of sorts in a different area, and I really love the idea of that. I like the idea of being sort of an Argonian in sort of in Skyrim.
Yeah,
way couldn't be more different from your your homeland. Although they are actually on the same side, aren't they? So. Oh, they are. Yeah, that's right.
Like, well, so Khajiit in Skyrim. Like, yeah.
A Khajiit in Hammerfell in the desert. He's going to be roasting. You have to shave him. I wonder if you can shave all your fur off if you're a Khajiit. We'll ask Bethesda about that. That would be amazing, because bald cats are the single most terrifying thing imaginable. Will there be NPC followers? No permanent followers. Sort of some quest-related NPC followers. There's a cool thing here actually. When you've got a quest-specific NPC following you, if another player is on the same quest, they won't see a weird doppelganger. They'll see a generic mercenary.
That is cool.
So you know, and if you played Old Republic, had the companion system, which was actually really good. But everyone would have the same companion, so you'd see a million versions of your companion. Here, other players will see this character as a generic mercenary, so it doesn't, ruin the illusion.
That is a brilliant idea. That is genuinely brilliant. Next one is on mounts. Will they follow you around like a companion, or will they have to be called or summoned?
They haven't talked about mounts yet, have they?
We've got a little bit of information. There was an interview I watched the other day that sort of suggested they're basically going to be more than just inventory items. So you're going to be able to give them names. You're going to be able to...
was that pets or mounts? Or did they
mounts.
Specify? Oh, cool.
Yeah, so you're going to be able to give them names, and also what you feed them will ultimately determine what kind of mount they become. So you can feed them like different things like oats and apples and stuff like that.
It seems like they're mixing pets, a pet system from MMOs and mounts.
Yeah, it's a really interesting way of doing it. It's sort of, and the way that they change actually reminded me of, do you remember the system in Fable where you kind of, your dog would change according to how you treated it and things like that? So this is similar. So your horse, and it is only horses as far as we can tell, will change over time depending on how you feed them. So some of them become faster if you feed them certain things, and also things like armour. So you're not going to have to buy...
horse armour.
No, horse armour's out. So that will kind of appear on your horse as it levels up. So if you see someone with like a really badass armoured horse, it probably means that they've fed and cared for it over a long period of time. And also they work like baggage mules as well, so you can store some of your gear in them, which is amazing.
Ah, that's brilliant. Yeah,
I remember putting a mod on Skyrim to give my horse saddlebags, which was brilliant. So that's sort of there as default. You can have multiple horses, and they'll sort of, there's no mounted combat yet, so possibly in the future.
It'd be good to see loads of players on horseback fighting in Cyrodiil, in the big PvP arena with like 1,000 players and horses charging
like Ride of the Rohirrim.
That'd
be amazing. One sort of in the interview I watched as well, they was talking that because all the horses are going to be sort of unique as you progress them, like there's a chance that horse racing could be a thing. It would be amazing, like, if you didn't know how fast someone else's horse was going to be eventually.
Like, but you could bet on it and stuff.
Just the whole thing will just be like a giant Ladbrokes. Next question is, what will the max level be? Which we've already touched at. It will be 50, and they have specified there will be sort of an end game after that. So you've obviously got the bit where you can go to different areas, but I think there'll be sort of the high tier kind of post top level stuff going on as well.
And you can do. Someone asked this actually. This question might be coming up, but someone asked if you have to be 50 to do PvP. No, you can do PvP. From what I believe level 10 onwards, because they said they want to make it inclusive, and it's the same as Guild Wars. Again, to go back to that, you can play PvP at early levels because you're given like a set of PvP gear. So yeah, you'll be able to do PvP stuff. You'll be able to go to Cyrodiil even as low as 10. So that's good. You
just don't have your skills, do you? They're just sort of
you won't be able to take part in the major battles and stuff, but the defending of forts and stuff, you'll be able to have some use, even if you're a lowbie. So that's good.
That's a really good idea. Next question: will the perk system be similar to Skyrim? From what I can glean, it'll be very similar, but obviously with a more MMO kind of bent to what particular skills you had. Did you have any sort of personal experience of that?
No, not really. So I think it'll just be the same kind of. Passive boosts to certain things.
And you can sort of pour your perks into any of the 3 trees of sort of health, stamina, magic. So they're all going to be sort of dependent on what skills you have. But you're going to, like, just a quick few that I managed to find. Like, sort of, there was an Ironhide passive skill which sort of brace blocks an additional 10% damage, things like that. So very, very like percentages, preventing knockbacks, things like that. The sort of stuff you're very much aware of. So probably no sort of cutting people's heads off like in Skyrim, but like that same system of just dropping your perks into particular areas is going to be familiar to anyone that played Skyrim, if slightly different. Dragons, yes or no?
I think, no, because this is the story of Skyrim was dragons. They've been dead for thousands of years.
Does seem highly unlikely.
So I think the dragons are all kipping.
Yeah.
In the little graves, waiting for Alduin to come and, put their alarm clocks on.
One thing you can have though is dragon temples. Apparently, there's going to be loads of dragon temples in Skyrim
because the Akaviri are linked to the dragons, aren't they?
Yeah, apparently, yeah. I mean, that's sort of the origin of them, isn't it?
And they've got a presence in. Have they got a presence in the timeline of Elder Scrolls Online, or have they already been ousted?
They've sort of been ousted.
Yeah.
Like the
that's what's happened. They've been ousted from the White Gold Temple, and everyone's trying to reclaim the continent.
Yeah. I mean, I would sort of eat my non-existent hat if you don't see some glimpse of them in some way, shape, or form. But they're again, this is like something we could probably delve into in a future episode. But they're a really interesting sort of part of the lore in that we've barely ever seen any of them, and it's all really kind of cryptic. And they've played like a huge part in the Imperial history.
We've only ever seen the temples and their armor, and it's all very Asian, Japanese style samurai type armor. So. Again, going back to armour styles, hopefully there'll be some nice Akaviri armour to mix and match with other bits and stuff.
Who knows, maybe like Akaviri DLC one day as well, like an expansion. We can hope.
That's a thing we'll address in another issue. What kind of DLC could they add?
Right, that's pretty much all we've got time for. Thank you very much again for all of your awesome questions. Hopefully we managed to shed some light on some stuff or start a bit of discussion on others. Really do appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, and if you have any more questions, really do ask them, because we can talk to the developers and get answers for you. And you can send us questions on Twitter.
Yeah, that's right.
What's Twitter?
The Twitter handle is @Tamriel We'll include that in the description as well.
Yeah.
And obviously leave comments with any questions you've got in. And,
the easiest way is probably just to comment on a video with a question.
Since you're watching it right now,
or
DM us.
Yeah, and we'll get around to it.
Hopefully, sort of within the next 3 weeks as well, we will have access to hands-on stuff as well. So, be as specific as you like, and over the next sort of few weeks, we'll be able to get you, exactly the answers, hopefully, that you're looking for. And again, just thanks very much for being involved, watching, and asking such great questions. I think that's pretty much it for this week. Next week, as Andy mentioned earlier, we'll be back delving into the sort of the dungeon systems, and hopefully we'll be able to focus on one thing and sort of go a little bit deeper, because this has become like a monstrous Q&A.
Yeah, but we have covered a lot of stuff here. But next episode we'll talk about dungeons, because they do some interesting stuff there. We'll go into a little bit of lore as well. We'll find some interesting related lore to dig into.
Yeah, we've got a few plans with that actually, depending on the sort of stuff that you guys are interested in lore-wise. There's loads of stuff that I sort of personally would really like to dig into. So if you're interested in the kind of good and bad Daedra, the whole kind of sort of mythology of it all, give us a shout. Or if there's anything that seems a little bit confusing that you'd like us to sort of go through in detail, again, let us know.
And if you are a fan of CVG's Rags to Riches series, I would advise to continue watching, because we may have some plans in store.
Thank you very much again. That's all we've got time for, and hopefully we will see you again next week. Cheers.
Bye.